Hello. I want to talk about the shadow. And in this, I'll be referencing three major figures in schools of psychology and philosophy. Um, and they all existed in different time frames. They were alive at very, very different times, but they all talk about the shadow. And um, each one of them has a slightly different interpretation on what the shadow is and what the role of the shadow is and the function of the shadow and what you're supposed to do with it. But before I get into that, I'll just kind of generally dance around the premise. So there are aspects of yourself which you may not be familiar with, or you don't want to look at, or you can't see. And all of them refer to the shadow in this kind of way. Um, the first figure that I'll be discussing is the most well known for this concept, and it's Carl Jung. Carl Jung is probably the most famous philosopher in history for talking about the shadow. And he has an entire concept called shadow integration. Carl Jung's shadow is the part of yourself that you don't know. Okay. Now, this is a valuable thing to understand. It's crucial to understand that there are parts of you that you don't know. There are forces inside of you which are you, which operate with or without your approval. You don't get to hand wave them away. And they will cause you to do things. It's the part of yourself that you haven't met yet. It's the part of yourself that you can't see, that you don't know. This is Jungian shadow. So, Carl Jung had an idea when you propose something, when you say something, you say, I'm going to do this, I believe this, whatever the case is. And then your actions don't align with that proposal, right? Why would that be the case? How could that be the case? If you're telling everyone, you're telling yourself, oh, I believe this is a value to me, this is important to me, and then you don't do it. How's that possible? Well, Carl Jung says that the reason you're doing that is because there's a large part of you, and sometimes it's the majority of you, which is terrifying, which currently still lives in the shadow. That means that you haven't met those parts of yourself yet. You have to go seek those parts of yourself out. You have to go find that part of you that is disobeying your own proposed goals, your own proposed values. You have to shake that part of you. You have to shake the hand of that part of you, introduce yourself to it. And the trick here is that you can't despise that part of you because it's you. That would be self-loathing. I would say that the approach would be that you have to have some sort of compassion towards yourself, some kind of understanding with those aspects of yourself which are weak or flawed. You have to seek them out deliberately. Well, the point behind Jung's idea was that the shadow is the mysterious, the unknown. the actor without a name who resides inside of you. There's another philosopher. He's modern. He's alive right now. He's um, making his mark in the world of psychology and philosophy, and also in politics and other things right now. And that fellow's name is Jordan Peterson, and he talks a lot about shadow. He talks about integration. He talks about you have to be a monster, and then you have to learn to control yourself and things like that. This is distinct from Carl Jung's work in some important way. There does appear to be a through line. Peterson seems to focus more on the fact that you have potential for harm that you're unaware of. Carl Jung's version appears to be, in large part, more general. It seems to be more about your lack of self awareness. Why are you not actualizing on what you could be doing? Why aren't you who you might be? But it also does deal with the monstrous side. It's a little bit, it's very comprehensive in the way that it analyzes this. And Peterson has created a lot of content, about the shadow from the perspective of, engaging with that part of yourself that is basically a chained beast, right? And then there's the third philosopher. And it will come as no surprise when I say the name that he would have work on this subject, but it will probably surprise people that he actually did publish work on this subject, because he's not famous for this specifically. He's famous for a specific work that he created. And that's Niccolo Machiavelli. Machiavelli also had work on the shadow and on shadow integration. And as far as I know, Machiavelli is the first one that I've seen writing on this. So Machiavelli was in the 1400s. And it's very understandable given his context why he would be thinking about this. The world was changing a lot in those days. And the landscape in Venice, I'm sorry, not Venice, in Florence was quite turbulent and somewhat hostile. The Medici family and all of the troubles that he went through. So Machiavelli was very concerned with the side of you that is capable of monstrosity. And it seems to me that even though Jordan Peterson cites Carl Jung for this idea, the way he talks about it, to me at least, appears to be more in line with the way that Machiavelli talked about it, which I think is very interesting. And probably not coincidental that a fellow like Mr. Peterson would not want to say the name Machiavelli in the inspiration for his concept of the shadow. Because modern people are terrified of the name Machiavelli. And sort of an unfortunate coincidence, because Machiavelli was a clever satirist, and I think people actually took the bait, so to speak, from his works. But it's not like he was a harmless man. And it's not like he wanted to be. Machiavelli, unlike Peterson and unlike Jung, was unapologetically, what would you say, formidable. Machiavelli was, as the youngsters say, not to be messed with. Mr. Machiavelli was a career politician, rich and powerful for a lot of his life. Um, and he was obviously exiled by the Medicis, and he wrote The Prince, and he satirized the concept of virtue that was being popularized there, and on and on. But one of the pieces of work that's less known that Machiavelli wrote was on shadow, and how most people think that they're virtuous, and most people think that they wouldn't do harm, but there's a power inside of them that they're not familiar with. And Machiavelli calls it the shadow. And any man, according to Machiavelli, can tap into this at any time and unleash a beast. And in Machiavelli's opinion, men should do that. This is the core difference between Jung and Peterson and Machiavelli. So Peterson and Jung, and this might be the reason why Peterson references more towards Jung, talk about the shadow as this potential which can emerge from you. And Machiavelli refers to the shadow as this potential that you can tap into. It's the dormant monster that can be awoken. Whereas the Petersonian shadow and the Jungian shadow is more like this beast which is alive and will emerge without your approval. This is one of the defining differences here. So, well, what do I think about that? I think that basically all of the above is somewhat true to some extent. And the duty of man, and this is just my philosophy 101, is to actualize the best version with application of freedom of will. You have to choose into the version which you want to actualize. You have to do this deliberately, and it takes work, and it can go wrong. And when you look around at the world, I think you see examples of all three of their ideas in action. There are those who tap into the sort of the Machiavellian shadow. They find this monster and they select into it and they lean into its full potential. They show people their teeth on a daily basis, on an hourly basis sometimes. There are strong men in the world. There are people who are unstoppable in business. There are people who are ruthless deal makers who will get every penny they can out of every transaction. Monstrous men walk among us, right? And this is kind of an irrefutable fact. It can be observed. This also goes back to the inspiration for what I think is the one of the foundational ideas behind the Nietzschean Übermensch, for example. It's this idea that you can tap into this legendary hero that's inside of you, or you can aspire to be this incredible, great figure. Um, Now, you can see the influence on Nietzsche from Machiavelli, of course. Machiavelli also influenced Baltasar Gracian significantly. Baltasar Gracian also influenced Nietzsche. And I'm sure that all three of those people influenced Carl Jung, and probably all four of those people influenced Peterson, and all five of them influenced me. And you see how it goes with philosophy. It's just a never ending spiral. Even if the way they influenced you is by providing you an idea that you fully rejected, that's still an influence, right? So different people will offer you different um, assessments of the problem of being a human, and they will also recommend different remedies to that problem. Um, for the most part, in my philosophy, I try not to tell you specifically what to do. I try to focus more on how I think it works mechanically. And the reason that I don't try to tell you what to do is because what you should do is contextual. It's always going to change. And so it's very, very difficult for me to want to tell a person what to do because I don't really think that I'm smart enough to dictate a final solution which will work in all contexts. I'm not even sure what that kind of solution would be. Um, but I do think that Machiavelli was basically right that if you want to be a monster, if you want to be formidable, if you want to be dangerous, you can select into that at pretty much any time. And I think that there would be contexts where that might be appropriate. I think in modern day um, culture and society, it's a little difficult to imagine what those contexts would be. And I'm not going to try to go into detail on every single one because we'd be here all day. But, you know, there could be a context where it might be appropriate to do that. But I think that what is probably more appropriate for today is the more Jungian style of thinking, which is the idea that there are aspects of you that you need to get to know. I think that this is basically a fact. There are parts of you in operation with or without you, and with or against you inside of you that are either making your life better or worse. And until you go shake their hand, they're going to keep doing that. So you need to really start to notice when things don't go the way you want them to, and it's your fault. Why? You have to ask yourself the question, why did that happen? Because it's highly likely that there is at least a part of you, it might not be all of you, that doesn't want the outcome to occur. You know, I realized not that long ago that the reason I had never authentically started this project where I was going to be making videos and publishing on a routine basis was because I actually really liked my life. I didn't really want it to change. And that there was some authentic concern that if this takes off, if I become successful at this, my life is going to change a lot. And that level of change is a little bit daunting sometimes, a little bit concerning. And I think I was actually afraid of success. At some point, I realized I'm not afraid of failure. I really don't care if I fail. I've never regretted trying anything. So um, there are actions that I've regretted in my life, but giving something a shot has never been one of them. So um, I think what I'm actually more concerned about is success. And I don't think that I fully knew that for a long time. Um, and this is an example in my case of a time that I didn't know that shadow part of myself that didn't want me to succeed. It enjoyed the kind of comfort, the mundane day to day predictability, the safety of that routine. But ultimately, safety is largely an illusion. Um, Life is very unstable and things can happen at any time. And I think that my medical conditions over the years have really woken me up to that and made me ask myself the question, like, you know, what would you regret if you ran out of time? And I think one of the few things I would regret is not trying. So here we are, we're trying. And so I want you to ask yourself these kinds of questions. I want you to try to get to know the parts of yourself that you currently don't know and see if there's some part of you that you can find and realign your whole self. It will never be your whole self, right? It will always be part of you, but realign towards the goals that you designate and become the leader in yourself for yourself that you could actually follow, which is a weird way to say that, but um, you are both the observer and the observed if you are awake. You are the thing that you are observing and the observer observing it. So you basically have to be able to lead and follow yourself. And you can't do that until you know every part of yourself. So you need to work on that. I can tell you that much. And so with that, I want to leave you with these three different versions of shadow and concepts of shadow and shadow integration. Find the parts of yourself that you don't know, shake their hand, be aware of the part of yourself that can be hyper volatile and dangerous, and understand that if you need it, there is a monster that you can tap into, and he is there. And it's a good idea to get to know him too. And somewhere in that blend of those three concepts, I think that you'll find some utility. And I wish you the best of luck with it. I do want to counsel you to always aim towards the good. Um, at some level, when you find the monster inside of you, when you go integrate the shadow and you go looking in the darkest places of your mind and you do this exploration of the profound depths of your spirit and your soul searching, there's a there's a risk of being lost, and there's a danger of going through a hard time when you find out something about yourself that you didn't like. But until you do that, you just know that that part of you was already there, and meeting it is the first step towards integration. And you never know, that part of you could come in handy one day. So um, it will make you a more complete person, a more well-rounded person, and people will actually respect you more, and you will be safer, and you will actually be kinder because of it. So it is good work to do. You just need to be a little careful when you do it. And with that, I wish you a good night, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much. Bye bye.